right, Joelle, give me the one takeaway that surprised you the most from Google Search Central Live. Not the headline, the one thing that made you not stand up, but sit up in your chair. Who stands up in their chair?
Yeah, so I would say the one thing that was really the common thread throughout the entire day was keep doing what you're doing. There were lots of different caveats to that. There were lots of different unique perspectives from the different speakers. But it's like keep doing what you're doing. Those are the most important things. AI, AI overviews, AI mode, they need that data to ground the results, their
Yeah.
answers. So it's important to keep those things.
Now, super good, and I think that's exactly what we're gonna try and get into in this episode. But briefly, Joelle, give our listeners just a brief background on you. You and I have been connected. I've known you for many years. I think it goes back to your days, certainly in kind of the core SEO community and some involvement with Moz and different events that we've attended together. So would love an opportunity to share briefly your background there.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, so I'm a growth product and AI advisor. I work primarily with B2B SaaS and tech companies to help them grow their businesses and drive profitable revenue. I also work as an AI coach with Grow Class, and I help founders and entrepreneurs grow their businesses, scale their businesses responsibly with AI. And I am also very community minded. I lead a few or co-lead a few communities in Montreal. One of them is the AI Collective. So we run some AI events for local folks to help them adopt AI. I also am a co-lead, recently just launched or relaunched the Montreal Girl Geeks, which is very exciting. We just had
Please.
our event, our first event this week. And I'm also,
Congrats.
oh, thanks. Very excited. Yeah. And I'm also a pragmatic ambassador with the Pragmatic Institute. So that's pretty cool. I'm leaning a little bit more into product these days. So I thought it would be an interesting opportunity. So yeah, and doing lots of
Awesome.
things.
No, that's so cool. You definitely have, there's a lot of irons in the fire and you have a lot of, I don't know, I think you have a lot of good, genuine information to bring to people, certainly in the digital space. And kind of to your point of like, bridging the gap between SaaS and tech and like, I think physical product, that's such a big part of it. So this was, I think, kind of to frame this and how this conversation probably came to be. And there's a lot of information I think that's coming out in the last week or so. But so you had an opportunity to attend Google Search Central Live in Canada. This was probably one of the closest, at least for most of us in North America, that we're probably going to see in person from Google. The last time they hosted one I was at in Mountain View, I think was the fall of 19, which is a cool experience. If anybody ever gets the opportunity to go, it really is. Joel, you were there. I wasn't, and I think most people listening probably weren't either. But kind of want to spend the next bit here talking about what went on, what was said, what it means. I think certainly for content, what it means for search and AI, how that plays into product and advancement of products, and perhaps where we as marketers, as search marketers, can push back. I think the big thing is that people need to understand that these events that Google hosts are not sales pitch oriented. If anything, going back on my experience in 2019, it's like you're in a room, there's likely a lot of Googlers around, and they're there observing and listening to feedback as much as you're listening to what they have to say. Is that set the tone for what those types of events are like and what you get out of it?
I think it's a great opportunity for lots of, say, Canadian SEOs to get together. A lot of the time, the conferences are not in Canada. They're in the States, they're in the UK, and now there's more conferences around the world. But for me, this was a really exciting opportunity to get together with some of the Canadian folks. I also felt like it was promoted very kind of like last minute and like word of mouth. So most of the people were, I would say, mostly from the eastern side of Canada. So I flew in from Montreal, so I went to
Okay.
Toronto. There were some other people. There was JC Chouinard from Quebec City. Marie Haynes came in. Like there were people coming in to Toronto, but most of the people I would say were from Toronto.
Okay.
Um, in terms of like the Googlers, there were the people that were on stage, of course, and the people that I met from Google beyond that were the local Toronto folks, and they
Oh,
were lovely.
interesting.
Yeah. And so in Toronto, one of the biggest things I believe is the ad department, like the Google ads. It wasn't necessarily the same, like I don't know if their goals were aligned necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no, I mean they definitely I think they blur the lines, right? As a team here at Black Truck that manages both that organic visibility side and then the performance space on the ad side.
Yeah.
No, I mean there's some connections there, and I think there's some unknown connections and we can make assumptions, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean it's good to see the other perspective. So there's kind of one slide that has dominated social chatter over the last week here. I've seen it pop up multiple times by many different people. I mean, you shared it, Cyrus Shepard shared it, and everybody has an angle and approach. And I kind of want to start there because I think there is a bit of an argument in one slide, and it's this idea that around commodity versus non-commodity content, walking kind of through this slide a little bit, but on one part of the slide we're talking about we have an interior designer where commodity and 2024 kitchen trends that you need to see. Non-commodity means marble versus grape juice, why I refuse to install stone for a family of five. Kind of talk through, you have an immense amount of knowledge not only from content, deciphering content and what it means, but I'm curious, what was the response like? I mean, what was your
Yeah.
response and what did you gauge from the crowd?
So 100%. So what I loved about that particular moment was that they shared examples. This is not something
Hmm.
that you usually see from Google. And so it was
Hmm.
nice to actually see, what they're actually talking about. They communicated it really well. Um,
Yep.
my initial instinct was like, yeah, of course, we'd all love to do that. Do we have the capacity and the bandwidth to really create that type of content? I mean, most of the time, people are creating that top 10 stuff because it's easy
Yeah.
and you can capture a large volume because you're hitting those keywords with high volume. The
Mhm.
non-commodity is really focusing on really unique micro situations that people are experiencing. So, yes, that's awesome, but how, like, I think the question is like, how do you do this and how do you do it at scale?
Mhm.
Um, and so we talked about this a lot, on breaks and after the conference, we had a little meetup, so we were talking about this. People have tried doing things like this. It's worked, it's not worked. I think if you're able to, I talk about this a lot too. You have the data that, like the traditional quantitative data that you have, Google
Mhm.
Analytics, Search Console, your
Mhm.
third-party tools, your in-app, your billing system, your in-store experience, whatever. You have all that data. You now have, I mean, you've always had access to other more qualitative data, but now with AI, you have the opportunity to go through that data at
Yeah.
scale in a faster and more usable way to
Right.
understand things like what do people love about your brand? What are their pain points? What are their blockers? What are the what are the things that where you differentiate from your competitors? What are your competitors doing well? So you're able to like understand that quite well from, let's say, Reddit or review sites or things like
Hmm.
that, but also from your customer service data, like transcripts or like calls or emails to
Hmm.
sales. You have all this data at hand. So if you're able to go through that data to like understand what the most asked questions are, the biggest pain points, the things that are closer to the action that you want them to do to help them achieve their goal, that's where I would start. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of like that's where my head went was like, how do we do this non-commodity content? We need to really understand what's driving those decisions.
For sure. And I think that I would say that kind of, I mean, tooting my own horn and Black Truck, but like it's hard. And we've talked about this before, and I've talked with others about it. It's like, man, I see a lot of the conversation that's being had, certainly in the industry, by some very well respected people in our industry. I have a lot of respect for a ton of people in our industry, but there's certain things that I'm hearing right now, and I'm like, no kidding. You mean you haven't been doing that? Like, what
Yes,
what have
agreed.
you been doing? And some of that is like, we've done it to ourselves because you have to chase the algorithm at some point because you have results, right? You need to drive traffic. And that's a whole other conversation around like, what is the meaning of organic search in your marketing mix? But like, I think that's what we've been telling clients for, gosh, a number of years is the reason that we've leaned into our original research and audit data is that the AI citation work is exactly this. It's Google didn't change the rules, guys. That no, they put words into what was already happening. I think that slide kind of helps that. If we think about it this way, I'll kind of break down maybe a couple different industries, and I think you can relate to actually both of these, hopefully. Is that so if you take like destination marketing organizations, for instance, or travel and tourism, commodity content is something like the top 10 things to do in Toronto.
Yeah.
And every destination on earth has that page and has that content. And they probably recycle it for every single season. Non-commodity is like why we stopped recommending name the iconic restaurant to first-time visitors and where we send them instead, right? Like it's a bold one. I'm kind of pulling this out of the sky. That's a bold statement to
Yeah.
make, but like, but it's a story and it's a point of view. It's an opinion, and that has a person behind it.
Yeah.
And the LLM isn't going to necessarily generate that out of thin air.
100%. And like, to be honest with you, you think about their motives, like Google or even some of the other big AI companies. Right now, their results are very generic. They're very surfacey. They're sort of
Yeah.
like they're missing that. So it's a great strategy to tell everyone to create more non-commodity content because one, yes, it might help them, but it's
Ooh.
self-serving. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah, just like mobile Geddon, right? Like the whole mobile first movement. Like if we think about that.
yeah.
So we go back, gosh, how many years now? What the heck year was that even?
It was
Yeah.
like 2017, 18, something like that. No?
Yeah, somewhere I was going to say I was going like 2015 to
Oh, maybe
17. There
yeah,
was a
maybe
lot
you're
that was
right.
going
Yeah.
on there, right? And even featured snippets 2014, right? So
Yeah.
even the concept of zero click marketing is 12 years old at this point in time. Okay, this is
Yeah.
nothing new, right? We've just done a bad job explaining it as an industry. So it's interesting that you talk about that. Yeah, is it a little self-fulfilling
100%.
in the sense that like, hey, you got to get your sites ready for mobile because oh, guess what? Pretty soon, if you launch a new brand, mobile first index only, right? Like, well, how do we go about that? Get all the data in there. Yeah, and interesting when we get down to it, when we look at the stats of what people are using these AI tools for and search for, an argument sometimes that we make is like, hey, did you look at where the LLMs are getting their information from? Like, where do you think they're getting their information from? Like, it's
Right.
known. I mean, OpenAI got popped because somebody found out they were using SERP API. Like, hello. So if you flip the script around on the B2B side, right? And so maybe it's a SaaS product and tech, five signs, it's time to switch CRMs, right? So you're, oh, I got to get to the pain point and I'm HubSpot and I'm going to do this, but it's like, that's non-commodity, or I'm sorry, that's commodity.
But yes, exactly.
Non-commodity where I was going is like, we migrated 1,200 contacts off of HubSpot into Pipedrive. This is what happened. And
Yeah.
here's the spreadsheet of everything you know that broke in the process, right? Or
Right.
like what broke, what didn't, and here's the things that we would do differently. It's not a it's not a blog post, but it's like evidence-based, evidence-driven. Look, here's what we learned in the process, right?
I also believe like they showed the example, the spreadsheet of the articles, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like depending on your industry, depending on your audience, depending on geographics, depending on a million factors, that content doesn't have to be an article. That content could be
Right.
a social post, it could be a video, it could be a podcast, it could be a million different things. It depends on who your audience is and how they consume your content.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding all of those nuances, you don't want to just follow the instructions blindly. You need to really sort of gauge what the best or what you believe are the best options based on the data you have and test, right?
So what do you think? Because I think there is perhaps this is the part that nobody wants to say out loud, at least maybe in the boardroom or in front of the CMO, is that non-commodity content takes time. right? So it's a judgment, it's a willingness to publish your point of view, certainly in a time that feels like, ooh, I better stay quiet about that. And I think that there's a lot of marketers that are going to stall on that. So when we look at Google and it says optimize for users, yeah, no kidding. Like, are you and your team and your approval process, are you actually built to ship that kind of work or not? Like, I think that's my big question is when we go into a meeting and we start to discuss ideas and what really I think long term starts to turn the dial up is, are you capable and willing to be able to produce that, right? And sometimes it's not about, hey, let's take our SEO hat off for a minute and we're going to talk to the sales team. And I'm going to say, Joel, as a salesperson, what kind of information do you want as the follow up? And you're going to fire back with like 4 or 5 things. I'm like, interesting. I bet 6 other people are asking those same things, right? Like, so I guess, what do you think is so hard for most marketing teams to actually produce at like this
That's
level?
true. Yeah. So I believe that the challenge is if you think that it's all on you, if you think like let's say you're the solo SEO and you're surrounded by other departments or other teams and you think that it's all on you and you have to produce all this non-commodity content, it feels impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there has to be a shift of mindset within the company to say like, okay, we're going to test this. We'll test this first to see if it's worth our time. We'll try a few things. And if there's some positive results, maybe that means that there's people in those other teams around you that get on board to support this mission and you work on it together. It can't be like a solo. It's
Mhm.
not like you're sitting there being like, I need to produce 100 articles per month. There's no way,
Oh
right?
yeah, no, no. I mean, gosh, I mean, I, the biggest thing that concerns me sometimes is when you chat with brands that are still focused on the quantity versus quality.
Yeah.
I always feel really good about the fact that we've always focused on quality and not quantity,
Yeah.
and the content has to serve some sort of a purpose. And what's interesting is nowhere in your mention there did you bring up search and volume and rank and volatility. You just said, no, here's the potential pain point. Playing off of that, what's the gap between, and I think this, you having a good product background probably can answer this really well. There's always that statement of, I agree with this and I'm doing it. What's that gap like? Because you have a lot of people probably in that room that are like, oh yeah, shaking your head. We've all attended conferences, right? And I've
Yeah.
delivered presentations you have where the crowd's like shaking your head and they're like, yeah, this is good. And then they're like, I'm doing it. But there's a gap
There's a
in
gap.
there,
And I
right?
I also think that people have opinions, lots of opinions, and the highest you don't want to end up with that situation where the highest paid person in the room is making decisions blindly. So if you have that customer data, if you understand what users actually want and what's actually solving their problems and like how to actually um, deliver that to them, then that's a reason. And then you focus on. I'm gonna give you some examples. So like a few years ago, early pandemic, I worked at Builder, which is it was like construction tech. It was kind of like at the time it was a matchmaker for
Mm-hmm.
homeowners that do renovations and general contractors. And we focused a lot of our content creation on case studies
Interesting.
because because the entire renovation process is so stressful.
Yeah.
We wanted to help people like one hear actual people's experiences to build trust. So if we didn't and we did case studies and we also did guides.
Okay.
And we avoided doing a lot of that top of funnel
Mhm.
stuff because it wasn't valuable to us at the time. It was very much like we needed to build trust and that's how we did that. And that's
Yeah.
really what that non-commodity content is, right?
Yeah.
So and I've been in a lot of companies where case studies get deprioritized for the top of funnel stuff. So it's a shift of like, what do we actually need to do right now to get the results we want?
Yeah.
We know that
Yeah.
top of funnel stuff right now is not, it's not delivering on traffic. It might, depending on your industry, it might help a B2B person create a report to give their CEO to make a decision, but you're not going to see what that looks like, right? Like it's useful in some way, but if you want to, if you're really trying to get that sort of like transactional movement, that's kind of where the priorities should lie.
Yeah, and you really have to apply. I love doing this. I didn't know what to call it until Heather Physiak's done an exceptional job of this, right? So VMLYNR on what's my job to be done, right? Like
Yes,
I've weirdly enough, like there's many of us in this space. Oh, I've always done that. I didn't know it was called that, right? So like the jobs to be done model. And I think it's exactly that is that is what case studies hit on, right? Is like I, as an engineer, can identify with that problem. Now it would be really cool if you could start to take it to the level of like Google's always loving to come to us and be like, look at this new thing and we're going to beta you in on it. And be like, yeah, my client's not Home Depot spending a
yeah,
million a month in search product right now, right? Like that's not applicable to this location that has, you know, their multi-generation hardware store with 5 locations. Like that doesn't apply here.
right.
Some seem like, how do you take that and break it down? But I digress. So what about like myths and things, you know, are there any myths or things that came up that like we could put to bed? I think there are a couple of things that Google addressed, certainly just having read kind of your feedback and some other notes, but there's a lot of practitioners perhaps that are still confused about.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I'm gonna start with the basics. I'm looking at my notes. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, you're good.
So myths, they're at the bottom here somewhere. Here we go. Um, so the LMS TXT
Mhm.
files, they're
Yeah.
like, they're not going to help you. They're not going to hurt you for AI overviews, sure. Um, it doesn't, it could help, not help with other tools, who knows? But they
Yeah.
said that for Google products, it's not a thing. There was also, they also mentioned that the Gemini is being used in AI overviews and AI mode, but it's not the same experience as Gemini, obviously, like, right? But they actually
Yeah.
said it, right? And I know too, like, I know from my own experience when I'm searching and I get an AI overview result and I
Mhm.
see the results and I
Mhm.
click on the links and I'm like, I can't find, they're giving you a summary of all the different sources,
Right.
but it's a mishmash. It's like a Frankenstein answer, right?
Well, and again, it goes back to the statement I made earlier is the concepts of zero click search or on SERP marketing. My bold opinion is that's nothing new, right? A featured snippet came out in 2014. So
Yeah.
again, we're 12 years, if my math is correct, into this. We now have a featured snippet that is more feature rich. It's much, much longer. It's pulling from many other data sources than just like, oh, the something from the top 5 of Google search results. It's pulling from many, many different signals. And I think that's what's a part of, I would say, let's use acronyms, GEO, AO, AAO, whatever. A lot of what's being marketed as AI search optimization right now, much like people who are selling like LLM.txt. Um, man, for as mature of an industry that we are now, I feel like we've worked so hard to gain that respect. How much of this is theatrics now? I don't know. I don't know. And I've talked to Nick Leroy, you know, about this too, and he and I recorded a podcast last fall about it. But I don't know. It's like tactics that sound technical and they get repackaged into a service offering, but then Google's coming out exactly and being like, it's not really moving the needle. And we have people that have tested it to say, yeah, you're right. We can validate it. It doesn't work.
I've heard both sides. I've
Yeah.
seen people show me that it's worked for them and that's fine. I think the idea here is that Google can render JavaScript. Google can access structured data. Google can understand the intent on the page. The algorithm, the machine behind everything is fairly smart and they've solved for a lot of those problems before any of these other Gen AI tools showed
Yeah.
up on the scene, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like to them, it's not necessary, and I believe them. Like I don't think they'd say it just spontaneously, but like at the end of the day, it could actually be something that one of the other competing products might find valuable because they can't render JavaScript,
Yeah. But
right?
to your point, right? Like I think where we're both heading, and this is always the thing that I lean into. And it's not the hype thing versus myth. It's a very practical approach that says, cool, yep, let's recognize that there could be a thing that is in LLM.txt. Great. But you don't even foundationally have tech SEO taken care of on the site, or we have performance things that are holding Googlebot back from crawling. I think Gary Illyes from Google there's a webmaster blog post of, I think in the developers blog just in the last day that maps out like, hey, FYI, these are the things that we're looking at in terms of like time to first byte and loading and things. And like performance matters in this case. And so I think what you're saying is skepticism is healthy in any young discipline, right? So practitioners, I think who are going to win are the ones that are looking at the primary sources and not just like the carousels on LinkedIn. So, okay, so if LLM.txt isn't the answer, Google's what are they using to ground AI answers? I think does that get us into structured data and schema? And like, let's talk about that because I think you mentioned things like cross ID linkages in in your LinkedIn
Yeah.
post and like explain to me what let's talk about that and what you're thinking and what you're pumped on there.
Yeah, so I'm a huge schema nerd. I'm just going to start with that. And I've tested all kinds of lots of hypotheses, let's say. And
Yeah.
one of the first things they that Ryan mentioned, Ryan was speaking to Ryan Levering from the Google search engineering team. But he started off and he was like, some people don't think it's important at all, and some people over-index on it and trying to game the system. And at the end of the day, it's somewhere in between, right? It's the standard, it depends,
Of
it
course. Of
depends
course.
answer,
Yeah.
but it is somewhere in between. And so what he was saying was that for things that are extremely precise, like we know that the LLMs aren't great at math or calculations, or like there's certain things that they don't do well. And if you're able to give them the data in the language, in like technical language, it's going to make their job easier. They're being the LLMs, right? So you have like things like pricing, shipping, product variants, loyalty program data.
Yeah.
Think of like providing the data in ISO rather than just in every other random format, or like a length of a video in the proper format that's structured, exact pricing. So all of these data points, if you think how much compute time the LLMs and the size of the context window, how much time they have to actually like parse through this data, if you can simplify that and you ground it in something that's structured like that, one, it helps it provide more accuracy, but two, potentially also spending less,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean, when explaining structured data, so schema to people, especially non-tech oriented, I say, you have to remember that Google is inherently lazy. They don't want to crawl your entire site. And so what you need to do is any way that you can, they don't even want it spoon fed, like inject it to them, right? Like if there was an API that you could feed that into, they're going to love it, right? The closest thing we have to that is make sure your sitemap is up to date and correct and in
Yeah.
Search Console, right? But like the next is schema, structured data, being able to go through that. So we kind of have, I think for e-commerce clients or anyone running multi-location businesses and things like that, it's that plumbing, if you will, and having those dots connected matter and they matter more. So I think the old SEO crowd has been saying this for years, right? Those of us who've been around, where we have this new AI crowd is now
Yeah.
saying the same thing, but for a different reason.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Like I've been doing schema for a very long time. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was looking at it from the rich results angle, like focus on the things where you can get those rich results,
Yeah,
but also focusing on like, for example, they gave the example of like for shipping, one of the top reasons for abandonment, shipping is one of the main reasons for cart abandonment. So like make sure that that data is front and center, right? Like it's just
yeah,
like focusing on I always, I hate to say this, being SEOs and everything, but like at the end of the day, the most important metrics are the business metrics, the
yeah,
revenue,
right.
the the things where people take action. So if you're looking at that data and seeing like how can we solve this problem,
Mhm.
you could potentially solve that by enriching your structured data, by potentially like keeping your feeds up to date. You're like I'm talking e-commerce
Yeah,
now, but like
yep.
Merchant Center, you
It's
have so
applicable.
many tools at your disposable at
Hmm.
disposal. You should use them, right?
Yeah, and seeing being a part of, some of our project teams that coexist, right? So our paid media team that is running shopping ads or PMAX ads are there's a lot of overlap and collaboration with our SEO team because what makes a really good merchant center profile and feed is really great SEO.
Yeah,
So if we're doing good SEO, our ads inherently become better. I
100%.
mean, there couldn't be more of a stronger correlation between a paid product and an organic product than e-commerce merchant center. I mean, you can learn so much. Yeah, in essence, at times, I know you called out Google Trends pretty pointedly.
Yeah.
So what's your take on like, what do you think? Why is that something that most marketers are missing? I think even Noah Lerner called this out 2 years ago at MozCon. We were chatting about it. He's like, I should
Yeah.
miss in the boat here. And as soon as we have an API, like it's going to be unlocked. But talk to me about that in terms of like how that reveals, cultural moments and content gaps and social PR, that type of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So one of the things that they said, I'm just going to repeat it. So something around, I'm going to paraphrase because I don't, anyway. So a keyword tells you what people want in a moment. A
Yeah,
trend tells you who people are. So it's a big difference for the brand storytelling, right? It's understanding, um, like think about it this way. When people search online, they search for things that they'll never talk to anybody about.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, I need a solution to my problem and an answer to my question. What that question is and what that problem is, pretty wide ranging, right?
Pretty wide ranging, and it can get really like going along with the non-commodity content. It could get very, very specific and unique.
Yeah.
It could
Yeah.
also become very like topical on like what's happening in the world today. It could be uh, also like, I mean, think of the pandemic. Like we were all going through something at the same time.
Hmm.
It could also relate to holidays. It could relate to, but it could also relate to very specific things in your specific region that aren't happening everywhere else, you know?
Yeah.
I think the way that they referenced it was very much like it's the largest real-time data set on human curiosity on Earth. So you have like all these searches and like they also said there's only a 3-minute lag. So you're getting data in like real time. So for let's say evergreen content, you'd be looking more at like trend data over a longer period of time. But
Yep.
if you're let's say you're more on social or
Hmm.
you're more
Hmm.
on the
Trend
digital
spotting
native
and yeah.
side, yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you're looking at the data in the moment and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is happening right now. How can we get in on this with
And
the context of our business?
and I'm glad that you brought it up that way because like at first my minor pushback is going to be around like, oh, okay, like trends data is great, but it's directional, it's not predictive, right? And I think that's a statement. But I think you also did an exceptional job right there. And I hope people understand it is like how you can also keep your teams from chasing every breakout that doesn't actually map into your audience. To your point, like if this is somewhat real time, which it
Yeah,
is, you still have to say, is this applicable to A, my business, and B, my audiences?
Yeah.
and then saying, okay, within that, what channels do I have that I want to go to market to, right? Like, is it social, a quick social share,
Yeah.
or is it something more, nope, let's watch this trend and it's a long form, or ooh, that is trending again. Well, let's go back historically because I think they give us 5 years worth and say, oh, well, we saw that here, we saw it here.
Yeah.
It's coming back, it's in vogue again, right? Like, oh, let's bring that back up. And that's a piece of content, or maybe your digital PR team starts to use it for pitches, right?
And one of the things they didn't talk about was Google Discover. Because, like, if you're, let's say you publish a lot of news on
Hmm.
your site, this is also an opportunity to help with your headlines and help you get
Yes.
that spike in traffic. So it's not necessarily for sites that aren't focused on news content and don't focus on the Discover feed to
Yeah.
have on their site. That's when you're starting to maybe do some social posting or some news jacking or whatever you want to call it. Like you get into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But like for your own site, if it's a new site, there's an opportunity there for sure.
Mhm.
What else did I want to talk about? So they also gave this 5-step process that I can share with you.
Yeah.
And so this was the 5-step process for using the trends data, and it was identifying the breakout query,
Mhm.
verify by subregion, because the geo
You
is going
narrowed
to,
in.
the geo is
Yeah,
important
but the
here.
real geo,
The
okay, the
real
real
geo,
geo.
the
Yeah,
OG geo,
OG geo.
and then synthesize what AI overview is already surfacing. So you look and
Mm,
see what's already there to find the gap so that you can sort of find the opportunity in that gap for yourself.
where do
And
you
then you
plug in?
execute with your own point of view. And that brings back to the commodity content. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's all very like, you know, they packaged it really well. And I felt like the message was consistent throughout. It was really interesting.
I think that, yeah, and I know that there's still continued talk around API access kind of being that next step, and I think that's good. Also, let's make sure we put an asterisk here, right? Like, to some degree, Trends is a free tool. To other degrees, it's a paid tool, right? So like, yeah, nice. Thanks, Google, for talking more about products that you're going to charge us for. But let's move past that, okay? Let's move past that. We're just gonna let that one sit. I, let's talk about like I think a piece that perhaps you and I and many are hoping for and didn't get, and that was like AI overview performance data, in Search Console, and Google says they're still exploring it. And like, what did that feel like?
So I'm not surprised. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie. I'm not
it's a
surprised.
lot of data to try and put out there.
It's a lot of data. I'd also say this, and I know we've talked about this before. As a user, I'll go on and I'll do a search and I'll get an AI overview answer. And in the answer, there's a bunch of links. And I'm looking at this answer and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. I need to see the actual source. So I go into the links and then I'm like, the answer isn't here. And then I start going into all the links and I'm like, it's not here. What are they getting at? What's happening, right? And one of the things that I'm gonna segue here for 1 second because I think it's important. They said something along the lines of people that come to your site from AI overviews spend more time on page. And they're saying that because they believe that searchers have more context before they get to the page, right?
Duh. But yes.
But like in my experience, I'm probably spending more time on the page because I'm trying to find the actual answer and I can't find it. So like,
Right. And also too, so think about it this way, if you're in-house, you're pretty myopic in terms of the data that you have access to, right? So hopefully by now you're taking some tips from folks like Dana DiTomaso and building out custom channel groups so you can see what our AI traffic is actually doing. So again, if people do come in from the LLMs, what are they doing?
yeah,
Take a real hard look at that, of the type of audience that is. And because when you have access to many different industries and many different brands like we do, I can tell you, yeah, some of those valuable, others not so much. And the traffic that you did lose, in the last year were probably people that were never going to buy from you to begin with. They were DIYers and they wanted to learn how to make the sauce type of thing. And so guess what? They weren't going to buy from you to begin with.
Yeah.
So that's where I can say, yeah, if they are clicking through and coming to you, they are going to be more valuable. But there's that level of skepticism that comes in that you're bringing up without calling it right out and saying, yeah, I'm still looking for the answer on the page, right?
I'm still looking for the
Um,
answer. But that leads to, I'm going to go back to answer your original question. And that's if, so let's say you have the answer, this long
mhm.
conversational answer for your query, right? And you're trying to report on that, but the sources aren't necessarily, they don't connect 100%. How are you supposed to report on that?
I mean,
And how are you supposed to report on something that's like this long? You also have, we were talking about this afterwards with some of the Google speakers, and that's you have this big long answer, you have on top of the snippets, on top of the blue links, on top of the map pack, on top of the you have like the other links besides the AI overview. There are so many lists there. Plus, you have the people also ask, like you have so many lists,
lists on lists.
lists on lists on lists. What's more important? What's more valuable? How do you measure them against each other, beside each other, on top of each other? They're like, so like right now, if you look at a lot of the third-party tools, they're still
Mhm.
coming up as the zero or like one, like at the top of the list,
Yes.
but all of them are considered as that top of the list. And then you have all the stuff underneath. But like there isn't a consistent way to measure it right now because no one's come up with that 100% like this
I,
is the best way to do it.
I was gonna say, because that's where the frustration comes, right? That's where the rub is of like we're told to optimize for things, but the data to measure any of it isn't there yet, at least from the Google sphere. So I'm curious your take.
Yeah,
What are you hearing and what are you seeing as like measurement workarounds that different practitioners are using? Because I'm curious about this because I think that the word that we all use is visibility, but visibility means a lot of different things to many different people.
100%. And so I come from many different worlds. Like I come from growth and product
Mhm.
marketing and brand and analytics. And so I feel like I have a good sense of the different aspects. The way that I measure it with for my clients is in several ways. So one of the ways is I'm going to say share of voice. So
Yeah.
like how many times your brand is being mentioned within those answers, but you also
Hmm.
have to think about how they're being mentioned, right?
That's a big one.
So like if you're being mentioned on a competitor's comparison post,
Is that good?
Is that good for you?
Yeah, there's sentiment that needs to come in there too,
So
right?
there's a sentiment, there's the intent.
Mhm.
So like, so we look at sentiment, we look at intent, we look at the share of voice. I also look at the questions that I'm not going to say competitors, top competitors are showing up for. Because at the end of the day, if we go back to the jobs to be done,
Yeah,
we want to make sure that because you could be answering the same question as another brand that has nothing to do with you and it will never be a competitor. You don't want to necessarily measure against them when you're trying to when your goals aren't the same. You
exactly.
might look at it and say like, "Oh, why am I ranking for answers with this other brand? Does it make sense? Should I be niching down more in terms of the content I'm producing?" That's
Yeah,
a whole other, I was
yeah,
going to say
it
a
is.
French expression, but I don't think it makes sense here. But
No, no, no. But I do get what you're saying there because I think that we're all flying partially blind there, right? And so this idea that the scary part is we have people that are investing in tools because the tool maker is saying that they can show you these things and but none of that is standardized, right? And also I always push back and say, yeah, but like if you're going to measure visibility, let's make sure that it's relevant, right? I used a case recently in the travel and tourism space and where I was talking with a large group about measuring and just I wasn't giving out an exact playbook. I wasn't giving out, like this is the way to do it. I said, no, we need to start opening our minds to the different ways we think about this, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I said was, if you look majority of the time, like your destination, so where you're going, will always win. But as the brand, so if you're a resort or a destination marketing organization or something like that, right? So you're like, a visit Toronto or something. Are you the one that's being cited? Right? Your city is being talked about. Absolutely. So that's got to be good for you. But where's it being pulled from? Is it a 2-year-old outdated TripAdvisor post? Is
Right.
it information that's coming from a shuttered business that didn't have a good brand reputation to begin with? I mean, there's a lot of factors at play there. And I just hope that we can have more marketers that are willing to have the honest conversations about like let's really take a hard look at this before we jump into measuring these things of like what we're going to measure,
Yeah.
why we're going to measure it, why that's important to you, and
Yeah.
also realize this is one of the most volatile spaces right now. We've already seen different platforms shrink the number of citations they've put out there. So the number of links that they show in those and the ability to jump off. So there's a lot in there. I guess my I come back to like if you have a vendor that's selling you precise AI overview attribution today, I would ask them how they got that data that
Yeah.
Google itself says doesn't exist yet, right? Like how are you getting that? Let alone that tool is going to then make recommendations on how you as a brand is going to get there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say there's a lot of going back to the hype cycle, there's a lot of
Hmm.
people saying they could do a lot of magical things right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the best piece of advice I can say is if it seems too good to be true right now, it probably is. And there's people probably gaming the system in some way.
Oh, for sure. Always.
Probably
Come
there
on.
are.
We can't have nice things.
But like I would say that's only going to last for so long. Like we
Yeah,
know in this
yeah,
industry that
totally.
people that are doing that, it's going to crash and burn at some point. It's just a
Yeah,
matter of time. So I
yeah.
would say going back to what we were originally talking about, doing the foundational SEO things for crawlability, indexing, page
Hmm.
experience, all of those things are foundational. They're
Yeah,
important still. So make sure those things are solid and
yeah.
then layer on, that's when you can layer on the structured data and then you can layer on some of your hypotheses and test things out. I'm a very big believer in testing things before scaling, so it's
Going
important.
global.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my viewpoint on all that.
And to add to that, I think that's very important. You do have to have the wherewithal as a marketer now more than ever to read between the lines or kind of see the forest through the trees because it worked for one brand in one particular industry doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for your brand and your particular industry if you replicate that, or even if you work in that industry or adjacent, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And so, yeah, getting back to focusing on doing really great things. Ross Simmons, I think, is speaking this week at SEO Week, and he just made a comment about something, and I commended it on it because I think we need more of this. It's like, man, if more marketers and founders and CEOs and C-suite would just, I want you to ignore the headlines for a minute. I want you to ignore the headlines. Hell, do it for a week would be amazing. Ignore the headlines for a week and focus in on what you're truly good at and what your brand is truly known for. Watch what you're going to be able to do and ship and how your customers react and respond. And I think that that's a much, much better path moving forward. because the world of search has always been reactive. Yeah, it has to be, right? The algorithm changes more than the US tax code in a year. Like that just happens. So like, how is it that anybody can predict what's going to happen and how it's going to impact you? And I think this is just one more case of that. So I think this is really great. And it, really in future upcoming episodes and some things that we're working on, I want to get deeper into talking about different types of content and whatnot that are not only being cited more in AI overviews, but just let's provide people with more information. So, I really appreciate you being a guest on the redirect today for this episode. But if people want to find out more about you and what you're up to, I'll certainly drop some info in the show notes, but where can people find you?
So the best place is probably LinkedIn right now. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat all these. This is my favorite thing to talk about. So if people want to chat, we can
Yeah.
chat about this. Thanks so much, Jason, for having me on. I
Yeah,
appreciate
absolutely.
it. I love
Yeah.
chatting with you, and
Thank you.
we don't do it often enough.
I know. We don't, I feel like that about a lot of people in our industry. I feel very fortunate to have made some great connections and have relationships and be able to call on people. So it's wonderful. So thank you for being on the redirect. And I always say, good luck, everybody. Like that's really my parting words. Is like be good and like good luck out there, until next time. So
Yeah.
but wonderful, wonderful having you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason.